Hey everyone, Alex from wornoffkeys.com, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you how you can secure a Linux VPS that you might be renting in order to host a website or a Discord bot or something else like that. I'm going to be renting a new VPS within DigitalOcean in order to show you all the steps from a brand new VPS. So if you are interested in using DigitalOcean, the top link within the description and the pinned comment will give you $100 in credit, and that has to be used within the first 6 months. So worst case scenario, you just get 6 months of free hosting. Once you've created a DigitalOcean account, you should see somewhere where you can click on create and then select droplet. That's going to be their VPS solution. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. The first thing we want to do is make sure that we are on the $5 a month plan right here. This is all we need for this tutorial. However, in most cases, if you just have a small application, this should be fine as well, but you'll have to look at the different specs offered here and choose the plan that's right for your own application. I'm going to be using Ubuntu right here. However, a lot of the similar steps will work in other operating systems, but there'll be some minor differences here and there. So if you want to follow along completely, then select Ubuntu. We can then scroll down. You can select your data center location. I'm just going to keep mine in New York. I can then scroll down further. And one thing we're going to be covering within this video is how to use SSH keys, which are more secure. However, I am not going to be doing it here within this option. Just in case some of you are not using DigitalOcean, I'm going to be creating a VPS using a standard root password, and they'll be configuring SSH keys on the actual server. So I'm going to generate a root password here. We can then scroll down and we can choose a host name. This is going to be what you see on your actual DigitalOcean account. So I'm just going to name this security-tutorial. Obviously you can name yours whatever you want. I'm going to scroll down and you can enable backups for an extra $1 a month. However, I'm not going to do that within this video. I'm then going to click on create droplet. So at this stage, we can then click on the new VPS that you should see up here near the top, and you should see this progress bar, and once this is completed, we'll then have access to our droplet. Now that my droplet is created, I'm going to go ahead and open up a terminal. I'm going to be using Commander in this case, and the link to this will be found in the video description. However, you can use whatever terminal you want. I'm going to zoom in here so you can see it a bit better. So I'm going to connect to this VPS using SSH root at, and then I'm going to copy the IP by clicking copy up here, and then right clicking in my console to paste. Then going to ask if we're sure we want to connect. I'm going to type in yes, and then it's going to ask us for our password. So I'm going to right click to paste in the password that I entered on the previous page for DigitalOcean. And after pressing enter, we should be logged in as we see right here. So I'm going to expand this, and now we are logged into our VPS. I can use ls to see the files. I can use pwd to see our current directory. And so we are inside the root folder as expected. I'm actually going to expand this much further because we're going to be doing a lot of work in here. I'm going to hold down Control and press L in order to clear the console. Alternatively, you can just type in clear and it should clear as well. So the first step is to update all of the packages and software installed on this machine. We can type apt upgrade -y. The -y is going to be useful because it's going to avoid any yes or no prompts that might come up. This is going to update everything within this machine. Okay, so this is done. I'm going to hold Control and press L again in order to clear our console. Now the next step is going to be changing the default SSH port, which is 22, to something else. This is going to make it just a tiny bit harder in order for people to actually detect what port to actually log into using SSH. This is one of the things that you can technically skip, and so if this is something that you know you don't want to do, then you can go ahead and look at the YouTube player at the bottom and then go to the next section. However, if you do want to do this, I'm going to be using Nano as a text editor, and if you are familiar with Linux and you have a different text editor of choice, then feel free to use that. To make sure that this is installed, I can just simply type Nano, and it's going to open up a blank text document, which means that this is installed. I can then hold Control and press X to exit this, and now I'm back into the main terminal. So in order to edit the SSH config to change this, I can say nano /etc/ssh/sshd. We can actually press tab to autocomplete this. It is sshd_config. And now we are inside of this file. So scrolling down here, we have port 22. We're wanting to uncomment this and we're wanting to change this to something else. So change this to whatever you want. I'm just going to change mine to 2222. Obviously, you should avoid popular ports that are being used by different things and also any ports of the software you're hosting off of this VPS might be using. So I'm going to press Control X to save. I'm going to press Y to save this. Now we need to restart the SSHD service. So I can say systemctl restart SSHD. And then I can type in exit to actually disconnect from this VPS and go back to my main machine. If I press up to go and reconnect using the same command, if I press enter, nothing's going to actually happen here. And eventually it will say connection refused because there's no SSH service listening on port 22. So pressing up again, we can go back to the previous command. I can then type -p for a port flag, and then I can add in the actual port that you specified it to. In my case, that is 2222. I can then press enter. It's going to ask me for the password. I can right click to paste that in. And now I'm connected back to the machine. So I'm going to use Control L to go ahead and clear the console. And the next step is to set up a firewall using the UFW service. We're going to set up some default policies for the firewall. So I can say UFW default deny incoming. And this is going to by default deny all incoming traffic. We can then type UFW default allow outgoing, which is going to allow all traffic that is leaving the VPS to actually work. And this will typically be things that we are doing. Now we want to make sure that we can still log in using SSH because by default, we just denied everything that is incoming and that includes SSH. And normally you can do this with UFW allow SSH, but by default, that is going to be using port 22. However, we changed our SSH port. So instead of saying SSH, we want to use the port that you specified a few moments ago. In my case, that is 2222. And then we can enable the firewall. So UFW enable. We then get a confirmation saying command may disrupt existing SSH connections. Proceed with operation. We're going to type Y for yes. Firewall is active and enabled on system startup. So now I can type in exit. And now we are back inside of my main machine. I can press up to try and reconnect to this. Pressing enter, we then are prompted for our password, which I will right click to paste in and press enter. And now we are still logged in. So now we have a firewall that is going to be denying all connections aside from on port 2222, which is the SSH port. And you might also want to use the UFW allow and whatever other ports you might be using. For example, if this is a web server, you might want to allow port 80 and port 443. And if you're hosting other types of software, you might also want to allow other ports depending on what that software is. I'm going to use Control C to cancel that, and then Control L to clear my console. The next step is going to be creating a non-root user, and we'll eventually make it so this is the only user you can log in with. This user won't really have too much access of anything, and its only purpose is essentially to make it so if someone does log in, they can't do anything, but you as the person who owns the VPS can then log into root through that user using the root password. So in order to do this, I'm going to say add user, and then we can type in the username. For simplicity, I'm just going to type in Alex in all lowercase. You can use your own name. However, I've been told by some people that using things that are easy to guess, while in reality may not make an actual difference on the security threat, but it's just one extra piece of information that they might be able to guess. So for simplicity, I'm going to use Alex. However, in the past, I've used random animal names and other things that have no meaning to the actual project whatsoever. So feel free to implement that if you want. I can go ahead and press enter, and it's going to go ahead and create the user. And now it's asking me for a password. I'm going to right click to paste in a password that I just generated. I'm going to right click again to retype it. And now it's asking me for some information. I'm just going to go ahead and press enter on all this stuff. Is the information correct? Yes. So now I'm going to type in exit. So I'm back on my local machine. I could then press up to go to the previous command. And instead of using root, I'm going to then log in with Alex. And you can try logging in with whatever your username was as well. I'm going to press enter. It's going to ask me for my password, which I still have copied. So I'll simply right click and press enter again. And now we are logged in using the Alex user, which does not have too much access because we did not make this a sudo user, which essentially gives it sudo root permissions. I can type pwd, and we see that we are now inside of home/Alex and not the root directory. And we can actually log into root from here by typing su space root, pressing enter, and it's going to ask us for our password for the root account. I can then right click to paste that in. And now we are logged into the root user, as you can see right here. So to demonstrate that this Alex user does not have that many permissions, I'm going to change directory to my root user. So typing pwd now shows that we are inside of the root folder. Typing ls shows that there's not much here. And so I'm going to make a file here. So I can say nano test.txt. And I'm going to say some important data and then press Ctrl X to exit this. Press Y to save this and press enter to confirm. Now typing ls will show that there's test.txt here. And I'm going to log into the actual Alex user, so I can type su alex, and we're automatically logged in. If you're not automatically logged in, then just simply enter your password. Now if I were to type ls, we see cannot open directory, permission denied. We see right here that we are within the root directory, and if I were to try and delete test.txt, which we see that we have right here from whenever we were root, I can type rm test.txt to try and delete it, and it's also going to say permission denied. So this Alex user does not have access to anything other than what's in his own folder. So I can type cd tilde. If I type pwd, we now see that we are within my own folder, home/Alex. I can then create a test.txt file here. Simply say hello world and close and save it. And then typing ls, we now see it. I can also delete it with rm. Typing ls again, it's now gone. So this Alex user doesn't have too many permissions at all aside from his own folder. That means it's going to be perfect for our use case, which is only to be able to log into our root account. So on the off chance that someone somehow is able to log into your machine, they can't really do anything without knowing your root account password as well. So now we're going to make it so you cannot log in to SSH using the root user. The only way to log in is to use a different user such as the Alex user here or whatever you named yours. So I'm going to use Control L to clear the console. I'm then going to say nano /etc/SSH/SSHD. We can press config to autocomplete this and then press enter. So I'm going to scroll down until we see permit root login right here. By default, it should be uncommented. If there is a pound symbol or hash symbol here, just go ahead and delete it. And you want to change this to no. We can then exit this. And we actually get a permission denied here because I forgot to switch to my root user. So I'm going to go ahead and exit this, and I'm going to say su root to switch back to the root user. I can then right click to paste in the password, and then I can nano /etc/SSH/SSHD config. And then scrolling down further, we now see permit root login, and we're going to change this to no. Now we can go ahead and save this, and we can restart the SSHD service with systemctl, restart SSHD, and now we can use exit. And now we're back into the Alex user. We could type in exit again. We're back into the root user. This is because from root, we logged into Alex and then root again. We could type in exit again. We're back in the Alex user. And one more time, it should actually log us out. So whenever you switch from user to user, you'll have to type in exit each time to go back to the previous user you were. But eventually you get to the stage where you were on your local machine. So I can press up and I'm going to try and log into the root account. So root at the IP, and then using the 2222 port, I can then press enter. It's going to ask me for the password, which I can right click to paste. And it's going to say permission denied, please try again. So I can go ahead and try again. And it's still going to give me an error because we're not allowed to directly log in using root. So I can press Control C to exit this. Pressing up again, we can then change this to Alex or whatever you named your user. And now we should be able to log in if I go ahead and copy and paste the password. And here we're logged in just like normal. So now we've disabled the root login, which everyone is going to know exists on the machine, and now they have to know what your other user is in order to log in. Now the next step is going to be creating SSH keys and making it so we can only log into our non-root user using SSH keys and then completely disabling password authentication after that. SSH keys are far more secure than standard passwords, so it is highly recommended that you always use SSH keys on your VPSs, even if it's just a small personal project. So I'm going to type in exit to get back to my actual machine. I'm going to use Control L to clear the console. And now I'm going to generate an SSH key by typing SSH-keygen for key generator -t RSA. It's going to then ask for where the file should live. I'm going to keep the default path here, but I'm actually going to copy everything aside from the actual name at the end. I can press enter to copy this. And then I can right click to paste this in, and then I'm going to add in security_tutorial, and then I'm going to press enter. It's going to ask for a passphrase, and this is basically going to make it so it's more secure on your local computer. For example, if your computer gets stolen, then people cannot log into your VPS because there is a passphrase which you must know. So I typically always use a passphrase. However, this does mean that whenever you log in, you will have to type it in, so that's up to you. I'm going to go ahead and use one for this tutorial, but mine's going to be very simple. It's just going to be password. And it's going to ask me to repeat it. So I'm going to enter it again. And now it gives us this, and this means that everything is working. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this entire path right here and then press enter to copy it. So at this stage, a public key and a private key were created for us. I'm going to open up a Windows Explorer here, and I'm going to navigate into the folder that has our actual SSH key. So I'm going to delete the security tutorial and I'm going to press enter. And we now see these two files right here. One is security tutorial, the other one is security tutorial.pub. .pub is going to be the public key, which is what we want to actually use on the machine. This is safe to send to people, and the secret one is something you never want to send to anyone. So I can right click on this, I can open with, I'm going to select Notepad and click OK. I'm going to keep this open here. We want to go back into our console and we want to connect to our machine using the user. So go ahead and press enter and paste in your password. Now at this stage, I'm going to use Control L to clear the console. I'm going to type ls-a, which is going to list all of the files and folders that may or may not be hidden. We're looking for a .ssh folder, which we don't see here, so we have to create one using mkdir from make directory .ssh. We can then navigate into there, and we then want to use nano, and we want to create a file called authorized_keys. Now that we're here, we can minimize our console, we can go back to the notepad, we can copy this entire thing. Going back into our console, we can right click to paste. And now we have the entire SSH key in here. We can use Control X and press Y to save this and then press enter. Our next step is to change the permissions on the authorized keys file. We can type chmod 600 and then authorized keys. We can press tab to autocomplete that. We can then navigate back one directory, ls-a. We also want to change the permissions on this. So chmod 700.ssh. I'm going to use Control L to clear this. We can press up. We're going to try and connect to this. However, if we press enter right now, it's going to ask us for our password. In the future, we're going to make it so it automatically defaults to using your SSH key. But for now, we can press Control C. And before we actually disable password authentication, let's make sure that we can actually log in using the SSH key. So we're going to add on another flag to this. So -I. We then want to specify the path for the actual SSH key, which I can minimize this, go back into my Windows Explorer. I can copy this right here. I can then go back into my console. I can right click and then /, we can say security tutorial.pub, and then I can press enter. It's then asking me for my passphrase, which is not my user's password. This is the actual password for the SSH key. And at this point, we have not attempted to connect to the server. First, we need to make sure that we have the proper passphrase for the SSH key. And like I mentioned, mine for this tutorial is simply password. I'm going to then enter that, and now we're automatically logged in without the use of actually entering in the password for our user. So with that said, we can now disable password authentication altogether now that we know that we can log in without it. So we first want to navigate into our root user, so su root. I can then paste in my root password. I can nano /etc/ssh/sshd-config. We can then scroll down. We should see pub key authentication. This might be commented out. If so, just go ahead and make sure it is uncommented and yes is typed there. We can then scroll down further. We see password authentication set to yes. We want to make sure this is uncommented and set this to no. I can use Control X to exit. Go ahead and save this. I'm going to use Control L to clear this. And we now need to restart the SSH service. So like we did before, systemctl restart SSHD. I can then type in exit and then exit again. We should go back to my local machine. At this stage, we can press up to try and log in. Make sure that you are using the actual command that does not include the SSH key like this one does. So it's just specifying the port. We can press enter, and it's going to automatically say permission denied because there is no public key associated with this. If I press up twice to go back to using the public key, I press enter, it's then going to ask me for my passphrase, which is password. And now we're logged into our machine. So we can no longer log into our root account. We can no longer log in using the default port. That means people have to then know what the new port is. And we also can no longer log in using a password, and so they have to have an SSH key on the machine. So now I'm going to log into my root user using su root. We're approaching the last step here. I'm going to use Control L to clear this. We now need to install something called fail to ban, which is going to automatically monitor IPs that are trying to connect and doing malicious things or things that might seem suspicious, and it will automatically ban those IPs from trying to connect. So we can install this with apt install fail to ban, one word with the 2 being the letter -y. Go ahead and press enter. Now we want to enable this, so we can use systemctl enable fail to ban. And we can also start this, so systemctl start fail to ban. Make sure everything worked. Systemctl status fail to ban. And we see that it is active and running, so everything is good here. One thing I suggest you do at this point is to restart the machine. We can do this with the reboot command. It's going to automatically reboot the VPS and then kick us back to the actual local machine within the terminal. And once that comes back up, we can try everything again. We can try logging in through root. We can try logging in with passwords. We can try logging in with the SSH key, and make sure that the only way we can log in is through a non-root user using SSH keys, which is going to be a much more secure way than what the default VPS services usually have. So I'm going to go ahead and run the last command here. I'm going to enter my passphrase, which in this case is password, and we're now logged into our machine. So that works as expected. I can then exit. I can then go up and use the connection string that we used previously without the SSH key, and it's going to automatically deny us. I can also try to use root, and it's also going to automatically deny us. Now I'm going to go back and try and connect using the root user and the public key. So with this command, I can delete Alex and type in root. And even though we're providing a public key, it's still going to deny us because we cannot log in with root because root login is completely disabled. But of course, we can just go back and switch this user to Alex, and then we can enter the passphrase. And then once we're logged in, I can type in su root to actually switch to my root user, and now we're here. So this is how you're going to secure a VPS. There's many more things that you can do. However, this is going to cover in a vast majority of the common attacks that you might encounter. So if you're just hosting a simple website or a Discord bot, then this should be more than enough to secure your machine. If you have any questions, then feel free to leave a comment down below. And if this helped you, then please consider leaving a like and subscribing. But that's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching.